podcast. I am joined today, or rather I am joining at a lovely abode in Cheshire with Martin Edwards, former United chairman from when I was a child. He's of course got a new book out, Red Glory, Manchester United and Me. And it's evident when the little brief tour writers have shown me how much Manchester United still is with all the memorabilia. Well, Martin, United, 1980, only 10 years after you'd sort of like been involved with the club, obviously the sadness of the unexpected death of your father, and really for someone at your age and that time, it was quite a big step up, wasn't it, to become almost like the head of like such a institution even then as Manchester United.
I think the advantage I had was that I'd been on the board for 10 years. My father brought me on the board when I was about 24, 25. So by the time he died, I'd had 10 years experience as being on the club board, and that helped enormously. So I think by the time the opportunity arose, I think I was probably ready for it in my own mind. How
did your relationship with the managers at the time and the subsequent ones before Sir Alex, did you have a good relationship? There was a chat before you were chairman when Wilf McGuinness would famously say that he didn't really get the support off the board, for certain players he wanted, and sometimes it's difficult to assess it. I'm sure that you had disagreements with Sir Alex around the years about buying certain players and all that. But did you take advice, or did you grow into that role?
No, I think I grew into it. I think, as I said, with being there for 10 years and having seen the way that my father operated, with Sir Matt, with Matt Busby, with Tommy Docherty, with Frank O'Farrell and Dave Sexton, I'd seen the way that he went about it. And I suppose, I had to start fresh. Obviously, my first manager was Dave Sexton, and it was a bit difficult at first because, that was the first management change I had to make. And it was difficult because Dave was such a lovely man, but I just felt that, we weren't going anywhere. And then I appointed Ron, and Ron was there for 5 years, and I got on very well with Ron. And again, it's always disappointing sacking managers, but I felt that Ron, had done well for the 5 years, but again, we weren't improving, so I felt again we had to make a change. And then of course we had Sir Alec, and that he saw me out.
I think the first time I actually ever said hello to you, and I was a 17-year-old, 16-year-old kid, and you didn't know me. I was outside the Dell, ironically, which was Big Ron's last game in 1986. Yeah. And I was walking up and I was like, right, Martin, you sort of switched shocked and went, hello, and what's on? And I always remember that because 4-1 defeat. But is it true? I mean, I've read in newspaper reports, and you often talk about with some of the ex-players I'm privileged to know, that we did actually go in after Dave Sexton was sacked. You went in for Laurie McMenemy, and Laurie actually didn't want the job because he felt a bit snubbed after not getting it after Tommy Docherty was sacked. Is that true?
No, I don't think that's right. I mean, certainly I did have a word with Laurie McMenemy, and Laurie McMenemy intimated that he wanted to come. I think the reason he didn't come was that his wife didn't want to move. The children were being educated down in Southampton, and she didn't want to change the children's schooling, and didn't want, I suppose, they were comfortable down there. He was doing reasonably well. I suppose it was a big gamble for him to come north, or she thought it was. I think it was more her decision than his, to be honest.
Right, so was Ron sort of like the ultimate sort of like unanimous choice amongst yourself?
Well, no, not really, because the others had all gone off on tour. I'd approached Laurie McMenemy. I then approached Bobby Robson, right, and had a chat with Bobby Robson, and Bobby Robson thanked me for it and said, but he started something at Ipswich and he wanted to finish it, and his loyalty was there. And then I actually approached Ron Saunders. Right. And there was an Aston Villa manager at the time, and Ron didn't want it either. So by the time Ron came along, I got an approach from a journalist saying that Ron was very interested in it, but we'd probably come round to him anyway by then, because he was a young, enthusiastic manager at West Brom, and he was doing very well, so he probably would have been our next choice, but certainly him wanting the job certainly gave us the encouragement then to go for it.
Probably similarity between Jose Mourinho clearly wanting the job and this time round, wasn't it?
Exactly, there's circumstances, isn't it?
Yeah, but when you talk about Big Ron, I mean, I must admit, although looking back in hindsight, I know it was completely the right decision. I wasn't very happy when he was sacked initially, because then that period, I grew up watching Tommy Docherty's United, but some of the football when Ron's teams were playing the best was astonishing.
It was.
But obviously, we never seemed to quite cut the mustard to like previous managers. we were a great cup team, weren't we? We could beat the big teams. But the way we tailed off in 86, and there were signs there, but I just thought, he'd been let down a lot and all that. But when you look back at the other clubs he's been at, he's a great bloke. He's a good manager, but he's run close for leagues with other clubs, hasn't he? But he's never quite got it.
Yeah, it was a difficult decision, but I think what had happened was that he sort of finished off the end of the season before. That was the season when we had a great run, and we sort of peeled away. And he himself felt at the end of that season that maybe he'd come to the end. Right. And he did approach me about resigning, and I'd persuaded him to stay on. And we didn't really start the next season very well. And in fact, when we sacked him, we lost the cup game at Southampton, but we were 19th in the league at the time. And I think we just felt that it was a long haul back, and that maybe he just lost his way a little bit. Yeah,
and from that period then, or you might as well, I'm not saying you approached Sir Alex in advance, but you're thinking that you couldn't fail to notice what Sir Alex had done against the old firm up there, But was he just like the number one choice? You thought, this is the one?
Yeah, I mean, I'd sort of met Alex through when we were trying to buy Gordon Strachan. In fact, we did buy Gordon Strachan, but Gordon had signed a contract with Cologne, and when we went in for him, and Aberdeen were going to get more money from us than they were from Cologne, so Alex was keen that Gordon came to us. So he helped us to extricate Gordon from that contract with Cologne. So we got to know Alec a little bit through that negotiation. And I'd followed his career a little bit in Scotland. I mean, when you think what he achieved there, the might of Rangers and Celtic, and for a club the size of Aberdeen to actually win the Championship three times and win the Scottish Cup 4 times.
Amazing.
But then to go on and win the Cup Winners' Cup, it was quite incredible, really. So it was the combination of the success.
It's almost on par with what someone like, say, Clough did at Forest, isn't it? The size club,
Exactly, yeah. And to beat the might of Real Madrid at the Cup Winners' Cup final in '83 was fantastic. So, so we'd had our eye on him, and I think it was unanimous when the time came, we needed a new manager, that he was the man.
Many United fans, probably the nostalgic ones, who probably loved Tommy Docherty, would probably have loved Brian Clough like England fans would have done. I mean, was he never on the radar? I mean,
not really. As I said to you before, it's all about timing, isn't it? I just think that we had Ron, and Ron was there for 5 years, and then when Ron finished, Alec was the obvious one, and Cloughie obviously was a great manager. There's no question about it. What he achieved is magical, really, for a club the size of Nottingham Forest to be European champions twice. 2 years on the run, quite incredible. But no, circumstances just didn't fit in, really.
Thank you. And with Sir Alex, there's loads of things been written about it, and press have their own opinions. But one thing I do remember was it was about a year after I left school, and I went back to see one of the teachers, and I used to stop lessons I had a minute's silence from Munich when I was 13 in school. I used to always get this teacher around my finger, But he said, one of the first things he said to me about you, because your lot down there, he didn't really support anyone. He said, that man's going to do it, that's Ferguson. And on his basis was, because he'd got all the people with like long hair, the young kids having all their hair cut neat and all that, like a little discipline thing. And that probably seemed small fry, but he was running his way. And obviously, unpopular decisions like getting rid of Paul McGrath and Norman Whiteside, 2 iconic players for the fans. But when you do that and your results aren't noticeably improving overnight, it becomes a bit harder, doesn't it? And then we move on to like the famous game with Mark Robbins at Nottingham Forest in the Cup. But at that time, it wasn't all over. We didn't have MUTV and we didn't have all Sky. But you must have been knowing what he was building, and there was things there, like, Sir Bobby obviously always spoke about it, but there was things there. Was he really that close to the sort of,
Well, I've always tried to be very, very honest about this. I mean, he certainly wasn't. His job was not on the line on that one game at Nottingham Forest. If we'd lost that game, he wouldn't have gone after that game. But what I've always said is that if we'd gone to the end of that season and we hadn't, say, had a cup run, and let's say we got out of the cup against Forest, let's say that the league position hadn't improved, we would have been under great pressure. Great pressure to make the change. And we didn't want to make the change. We never discussed it as a board. We never got to the stage where we had to discuss it and make a decision. kept on putting it off, whatever, for whatever reason. Well, the reason being that we felt that he would come good. We knew how hard he was working, we knew what was happening with the scouts, we knew what was happening with the training, we knew what was happening with the youth team and everything else. And we never lost faith internally, but the pressure was mounting. I'm just glad that we won that game. We went on to a cup run, we won the FA Cup, and we never looked back afterwards, and it then didn't become an issue. But by Jove, we would have had, if we hadn't turned it round, we'd have been under great pressure to make a change.
Yeah, that's fantastic, thank you. When we spoke about that game where we had a great start on the big run, we won the first 10 games, and that season we petered out unbelievably with after Christmas it was almost relegation form, wasn't it? And then Liverpool ended up doing a double. So what started off being the first titling years, Liverpool did a double. Yeah. Under Sir Alex, after the FA Cup win, and then the Cup Winners' Cup, that summer there was a little belief. We didn't quite win the same, we're going to win the league, but there was a belief that we were almost ready for the push. And after losing it in the way we did, and Sir Alex has always been so complimentary, and he always accepts whoever wins the league wins the league. Most fans think we threw the league away. We know the fixture pile up and all that, but did you think maybe, like I did and lots of fans, we might be jinxed, we might not see this championship?
I was beginning to worry about that. That was my big worry, because that was the year that I felt that really we should have won it. But you can't just ignore that fixture pile up at the end. It was horrendous at the end. I think we had to play something like 4 games in 8 days.
We had Luton on a Saturday, we had Forest Monday, West Ham Wednesday, which was not a very good birthday present for me. Yeah. And then we had Liverpool on a Sunday.
I mean, it was a really tough run in with all those games. And of course, that was the year, and I think I'm right in saying that we knocked Leeds out of both the cups. Yeah. So we left them with nothing to do but to concentrate on the league.
Ironic,
and we carried on in the League Cup and the FA Cup. So we made life harder for ourselves, but obviously we wanted to win as many trophies as we could. We did actually end up winning the League Cup that year.
Yeah. But we lost to Forest in the 2 league games, which was again a bit,
We did. So there were circumstances, but yes, I was seriously worried. I felt that was a great chance that we had to win the league that year. And after 26 years, you begin, or 25 years it was then, you're beginning to think, well, is it ever going to happen?
Well, you think sometimes a bit romantic. And I was thinking, I tried to actually finally win it, and we could look at the fixture. We could win it maybe in April at Anfield, against our biggest rivals. Yeah. And then you think that, and we would be in the last of the old football leagues. We're going to become the Premier League, but it wasn't to be. But one thing that I've read so many times, I think both Sir Alex and Ryan have said it, and I've been told myself personally, was outside Anfield that day in April 1992 when a young Grant Giggs was coming off the coach, and some Liverpool fan asked for his autograph and then ripped it up in front of his face and spat something. Now, that seems, you wouldn't have thought it after the first 3 games of the first Premier League campaign when we lost 2 and drew 1, but that seems to galvanise. I have asked Brian this, Brian McClare, I've asked Sharp, I've asked him, I said, how did you lift that hangover the summer? How did you, especially after the first 3 games? Because we didn't look very likely, did we, to want to run that?
No, and of course that was the year that Eric arrived, of course.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, just before Christmas, we had the opportunity to get Eric, which we took, and he seemed to settle things down a bit, didn't he, for us?
Well, people talk about Schmeichel, but I mean, Schmeichel was obviously one of the big jigsaw, but there's no doubt about it in anyone's mind that was getting to believe. He was like the final piece of the jigsaw. He was born to play for United. He really was. But I want to go over it. I know there's been different quotes. I mean, whose credit is it? Let's go through this phone call from the Leeds. Was it Bill Fotherby?
Bill Fotherby.
Yeah. Was it so? You're in the office. You take it away, please.
No, well, I was in my office one day and got a call from Bill Fotherby, really inquiring about Dennis Irwin. He wondered if we would sell Dennis Irwin. Obviously, the manager wanted Irwin, and I was very friendly with Irving Scholar, who was the chairman of Tottenham.
Yes,
Irving had obviously Venables and Sugar had taken over Tottenham. Irving had left and he moved to France. He was a tax exile in Monaco, and he used to watch French football and he used to rave about Cantona. Cantona was his favourite player, and he always used to say to me, Cantona will be fantastic at Manchester United. You do this, do that, and all the rest of it. So when I got that call, I just happened to throw it in, just said, Bill, would you ever consider, and I'd heard rumours, there were rumours that Eric didn't get on particularly well with the manager at the time, so I just happened to say to Bill, would you ever consider selling Eric? And he said, well, that's not as daft as it sounds, actually. He said, leave that with me, I'll come back to you on it. So the next day, he rang up to say, you know, what's your decision on Dennis? I said, there's no way. Obviously, in between that time, I'd rung Alec.
Yeah.
I said, Alec, if I can get Eric Cantona, would you want him? He said, yeah, too bloody right, I would. So I said, okay, well, there's a chance, leave it with me. So the next day when Bill phoned up, he said, you know, what about Dennis? I said, no, he won't do it at all. I said, but we will take Eric off you. So he said, well, he said, yeah, he said, but I'll tell you what, he said, we'll have to do it very quickly. I said, why? He said, because they absolutely love him up here. The supporters love him. He says they'll kill us if they know we're going to sell him. We'd have to do the deal very, very quickly. Can we do it quickly? I said, we can do it as quickly as you like. He said, well, what will you give me for him? I said, we'll give you $1 million. He said, I can't do $1 million. He said, no. He said, you know. I said, well, what do you? He said, what do you suggest? He said, 1.6. No. We argued a bit, and I was 1.5, 1.4. I didn't move off the $1 million. And eventually he said, okay. He said, well, can we say it's 1.6? Say what you like. He said, okay, and can we do it quickly? I said, yeah, we do it as quickly as you want, honestly. He said, okay, we'll do it. That's how we do it.
That is, there's two transfers which I think back to, and it's, to me, it's like the JFK moment or something, or the, you know, where were you? And one was Eric, because no one believed, because you didn't have wall-to-wall coverage on TV, did you have sports those days? And it was like teletext, and it was like, well, yeah, whatever. He was April the 1st. And the other one was Andy Cole, because again, he was a star striker. And I mean, how did Andy Cole thing come about? Was that?
Well, no, the Andy Cole thing came about because that was between Alec.
Carry on.
Yeah. No, the Andy Cole thing came about, but it was really between Keegan and Alex Ferguson, because if you remember rightly at the time, Alex Ferguson wanted a new striker, and it was between Andy Cole and the lad that was playing at Liverpool, used to play for Forest.
Collymore.
Stan Collymore. And I think he was either one, whoever he could get. And I think that he'd spoken to Clark at Forest, and I think he'd prevaricated a little bit. So in the end, he thought, well, I'll try Kevin. And he spoke to Kevin, and Kevin said, well, said he was prepared to sell him, but he wanted Gillespie. And the two were in the equation, and I think we ended up paying $6 million for Andy Cole.
It's a £7 million transfer.
Yeah, £7 million transfer, and they took Gillespie for $1 million or something. So that's the way it worked out. So we were surprised that Kevin Keegan was letting Andy Cole go, and it was just put to me. It wasn't a negotiation. It was put to me. We can get him for X, and Alec and I both thought it was a good deal at that price. So let's do it. So we did it. Yeah.
That's fantastic. They're both, like, you know, very big moments in Sir Alex's United history.
And of course, Peter Schmeichel was another big one,
yeah.
Because Peter was coming to the end of his contract. He was on the European multiplier, whatever that was at the time, and it meant that we could get him anyway in October, sometime in October, for something like 300 and something thousand. But obviously Alec wanted him for the start of the season, wanted him for the training, pre-season training and the start of the season. So we had to pay a bit more. We ended up paying 5.5. They wanted a lot more for him, but I knew, was I going to pay hundreds of thousands for when I knew we could get him anyway in October.
Mm-hmm.
So all we were talking about, August, September, 2 months early, how much premium do we pay to take him early? So that was the negotiation really, and we paid 505 to take him early.
Did you do negotiations, things like that, or did you yourself, or did you have advisors with you?
I always did the negotiation. Right. Sometimes on that one I took Maurice Watkins with me. I'd take Maurice sometimes because it was a negotiation. Contract things needed to be agreed between the clubs and everything else. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You obviously had a very close relationship with Sir Alex. You'd naturally have to. I mean, was there ever times where you did didn't agree, and he'd want someone to pay so much for a player, or he wanted another.
Well, I
player.
think the only one I can remember that was out of court really because of the sheer cost of it, because they were talking net at the time, was Batistuta. I remember Alec was keen to get Batistuta, and when we found out what his terms were, and they were talking net, by the time we grossed it up, it would have completely shattered our wage policy. And I did always work on a wage policy, because at the time, don't forget, I didn't just have to produce a winning team, I also had to develop a stadium as well. I had to build a stadium, because, you know, particularly after all the major events like Heysel and Hillsborough and all these incidents, when we had to go all-seater, obviously the stadium had to be paid for. We had to rebuild the Stretford end, we had to rebuild the North Stand and all these things. This all had to be paid for out of profits. So I was keen to retain profits, to build a stadium, and also to build a team as well. I couldn't just think always in terms of the team. It had to be to be the whole situation. So naturally, I was reasonably tight on expenses and wages and things, because we had other expenses to cope with.
I want to talk about your book in a minute, obviously, because that's what you're promoting at the moment, and it's I've heard so many good things. It's full of so much openness about it. But I want to take you back to what you said about one of our former great players in my eyes, and Gary Bailey, because if I'm not wrong, I mean, I was a kid, but Alex said clearly he'd come into the end of his career. Yeah. And we went in for Jim Blythe at Coventry. We agreed a fee, but he failed his medical.
We did, yes. Yeah, and he had a bad back, didn't he? He failed his medical. He came for the medical, and the advice from the medical staff was not to take him, and it was too big a risk. He had something wrong with his back.
Before we mentioned Gary Bailey there, in that second, you don't know if you're aware of this, because I remember as a kid, but you know the Stretford End traditional banter with opposition goalkeepers in the 80s from then on, and he used to clap the goalkeeper, visiting goalkeeper, and as he got close to him, if he waved, they'd all give gestures to him. Yeah. Well, that happened I'm convinced by chance. That was a few weeks after Jim Blythe failed his medical. As fate would have it, Coventry played at Old Trafford, he was playing. So when Jim Blythe came to the Stretford End, knowing that he wanted to join us a few weeks before, the Stretford End clapped. So as he got really close, he waved, and half the Stretford End went, I made loads of gestures. And that became a sort of cool thing. But Gary Bailey, was that a lucky decision? Had you been told by people in the reserves that he was this throw this lad in, he's good enough? Because it was quite a big step, wasn't it, for a club like United to go for a rookie? It
was, yeah. And I think when Gary made his debut, I think he was about 19, wasn't he, when he first came in. And I could remember he came in, and of course at the end of that season, we ended up playing the cup final, didn't we, against Arsenal in '79. So I think it was just a lucky escape really, because people hadn't realised how good he was. I think, and he got thrown in at the deep end, and was it Everton away the first game? I can't remember, but I remember he got thrown in and he did reasonably well, and people thought, oh, he could be the answer to this.
I know it might be. I thought ironically it might have been against Ipswich at home. I know his first visit to Portman Road where his dad played.
Yes, yeah.
Was the 6-0 game.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that he obviously was on the books, but nobody had picked him out as being the future, because otherwise we wouldn't have gone for Blythe at the time. I don't think.
And we'd always generally, goalkeeping was a big position. You'd sort of, a club like United, would be expected to go for your Shildens and etc. Wouldn't you? Yes. But he was a very good goalkeeper, and because of his injuries, he retired sort of at a young age for a goalkeeper, really, didn't he? And he's been,
Well, no, he got injured. Remember?
Yeah, so I mean, he stopped playing.
He got injured playing for England, didn't he?
Yeah.
The bad injury was playing for England.
But then didn't he wait for originally to retire and pick it up against South Africa? I'm sure he stopped and started.
He may have done, but I think his injury stopped him being absolutely top class as far as the Premier League or the Football League was concerned at the time. Because we lost Coppell about the same time. We lost Bailey and Coppell both playing for England at a similar time.
Well, the amount of times that Robson used to get injured playing for England and blow arses. But going on to your book, why did you decide to do your book? Was it just you think, well, why not? You've got enough to tell.
Well, I suppose I got to 70, had my 70th birthday, and I just got approached by a chap called Robert Sellers, who wrote the book, and he just approached me and said, Martin, why have you never written a book? I'm a United supporter, I've been here all my life, all the rest of it. He said, there must be a great story to tell there. Why have you never written your book? And I thought, well, there's two reasons for writing the book now. Most people write a book, either they want the money, or they're egotistical or whatever, want to, you know what I mean? And I've never really been either, really. But I just suddenly thought that the way he put it, I thought, well, and other people had said to me, Martin, you must know more stories about me.
Well, that's the point. There's a story to be said. A young player who, no matter if they play for England and the United's first team or every first team, they're there 2 years. They haven't really got a story to tell.
No.
This is a story.
Yeah,
that, you know.
yeah, and it goes back to my father coming on the board in 1958, the day after the Munich air crash. He should have gone on the week before, should have been on the plane. It's all in the book.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I've got the story to tell, not just my period, which was 20 years, or 23 years as chairman, but my father's time. He was 15 years as chairman and a few years as a director before that. So I thought, well, there's 40 odd years to tell there of the story, all the different managers, all the different characters, all the different players. And I thought, really, it should be documented, even if it's only for my grandchildren or whatever, for future generations. Just, it's nice to have, you get records from players, you get records from managers and all the rest of it. There's very few from owners, is there? From owners or chairman or whatever else. They don't tend to write books. And I just thought, well, it's another side of it. It's coming from the management side.
Yeah. It's fashionable, well, perhaps amongst match-going fans, especially in the culture of like fanzines, etc. But you know, the chairman and the board are never the people that the fans look to them with disdain a lot of the time. They're selling, you know, in small clubs, they're selling the best players, or they're making the money, and you know the fans are getting flicked and all that. It's probably fair to say that you had some critics in your time at United amongst fans. However, whether it's ironic or not, well, because of the way other clubs have got in the country and all that, I mean, everyone looks back to say, not just yourself, but other clubs who've had other chairman who probably worked flavour of the month, that, you know, they'd rather have the old days in some ways, knowing where you stood with it.
Well, I never knew, really, what they really wanted, because, I mean, they didn't really want me. But then when I had the opportunity to sell it to Knighton, they didn't. First of all, I think they wanted Knighton, and then they didn't want Knighton. Then when we floated, they didn't seem to want, like, the public company. But then when Sky came in, they certainly didn't want Sky, probably because they thought it was Murdoch and not Sky. And then when the Glazers came in, they didn't want the Glazers either. So there's no owner or potential owners that have been that the club have actually welcomed and thought, well, this is the right person. It wasn't me. It wasn't the PLC.
I think you wanted Robert Maxwell. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, you know what I mean? None of them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know what really want. I mean, I think if supporters really, if they had the choice, they'd probably say, well, we should own it ourselves and have a committee of shareholders or supporters or whatever.
Or maybe at least like a bit more like Chairman.
But I'm not sure that.
I'm not saying no.
I'm not sure that works either, to be honest. You know what I mean?
But how do you view it now? Because how do you view not so much United, but I mean the whole culture of owners from.
Well, it's changed now. I mean, you can't change it, can you? It's what it is, isn't it? I mean, how many football clubs in the Premier League now are owned by English businessmen? How many? I don't.
But even we spoke about transfers before, and Eric, and what we said and what we paid, and we used to balk at like sometimes like a, you know, famously fans used to mimic having got Shearer for going to Blackburn for more money, you know, originally and all that. And then you think back to when no disrespect to them, but like the likes of Watford and Bournemouth for spending 20 odd billion on a player. It's a different world, isn't it?
It's a different world. But you see, that all goes back to the creation of the Premier League and Sky coming in and the television deals that they do nowadays. I mean, 5.1 billion, the last television deal. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that the average squad player in the Premier League now would be on about 4 million. The average squad player. So that's, you take your squad of 20 or however, and you say what's the average in that squad, and it's something like 4 million.
So in the days when you had George Best, you had Kevin Keegan, you had Brian Robson.
Yeah.
Them players were at the top of the game.
Absolute top of the game.
But they were wealthy as much because of the the sponsorship deals they did with Robson with jeans and the Brute and all that.
Yeah.
And a lot of them a year you could like even the players up to maybe like just before the big money. Yeah, I'm not saying that they're not like destitute most of them, but they still do a little bit on the circuit to earn money. Whereas nowadays you could actually be a player, you could get one good deal with a Premier League club and you could be made for life, couldn't you?
Yes, yeah.
You could literally, you get players signed for Premier League clubs, you hear about, not just Ireland, you hear about players writing off £50,000 cars.
Yeah.
They probably played one League Cup game.
Yeah.
It's different, and it's going back to that, it's a testament to me how Sir Alex must have seen it, how it changed for all the agents. He must have grated at him, but he adapted pretty well to the left, didn't he?
Yes, he did, yeah. And I think the other thing with Alec was because he's at the same club and he'd been so successful and all the rest of it, it was almost like second nature to him. You know, sometimes if you're in a job and you do it well and you've got the experience of doing it and all the rest of it, it actually becomes easier. You know what I mean? It's just a question of management then, isn't it? Tinkling a little bit here and there, but basically making sure that everybody's doing their job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think he grew. The longer he was there, the more success he had, the more he grew into it, and the easier it became for him.
When he left, I mean, it was obviously, it's been said about media sources and whatever, but what did you personally think? I don't mean what you said to think, but what did you personally think about how he could... It was a no-win situation for any manager that followed him straight away, of course it was, right? Because they weren't Alex Ferguson. But what did you honestly think about the appointment they did? I don't mean...
Well, the first appointment they did was David Moyes. I actually thought was hindsight's easy. I could easily sit here and say to you now, well, I never thought that was the right decision. I wasn't against David Moyes. I thought that David Moyes had done very, very well at Everton. I did. I know he hadn't managed what I call a top six club or whatever, but I felt that he what should we say, he'd done well in the years that he was at Everton, and he managed a club the size of Everton probably to their potential, their full potential, without winning anything. So I wasn't against that, but I think after the first year, I think probably when they made the decision, it was difficult to argue against. It was difficult to argue.
I completely hear you saying,
Van Gaal was a surprise appointment to me, really, because although obviously everybody knew Van Gaal because he'd been successful in Europe and all the rest of it, I didn't even have time to think about that before it was done. So,
I think that was just because they wanted to change. He was a big name in a sense.
Yeah.
And he was available, wasn't he?
Yes, he was available. I was surprised by it a little bit, but certainly the 2 years that he was there, I can't say I was really entertained.
No.
I think that
he was a character, but the football wasn't.
The style of football I thought was disappointing. I felt it was negative. It was square. It was back. It was square. I mean, I know that he had this theory that everybody is trained, drilled to play a certain way, and eventually everybody can play anywhere and all the rest of it, and then the results will come. But to me, they never did, and it was never the United style. It was never Manchester United. When I watched the Van Gaal teams, it never excited me in the way that say, Tommy Dock did, the way that Alex Ferguson, the way Ron Atkinson did, the way Matt did, all the rest of it. You know what I mean? I didn't feel as though he bought into the Manchester United way of playing. So I was disappointed. And now, I think last year again, it continued a little bit last year under the Van...
If we'd not won those two trophies, the last trophy in particular, it would have been underachieving.
It would. And what I'm going to go and say, that I was disappointed with a lot of the games at home. I mean, you go to Old Trafford on a match day and all the rest of it, and you come away thinking, well, not a lot's changed. But he won the League Cup, and he won the Europa Cup, which the Europa Cup's not an easy trophy to win, to be honest. You know what I mean?
It ticks it after that one we haven't won already.
And it's 15 games.
Yeah.
And it was 15, and by going for that, he definitely compromised the league position as well. He did, didn't he? You know what I mean? If he made an early decision to come out of the League Cup, out of the Europa Cup, he might have done a bit better in the league. He might have qualified through the league. But he gambled, and his gamble paid off, because not only did he win 2 trophies, but he qualified us for the Champions League.
That's right.
So you have to say the man was successful. And this year, he's bought well. I mean, he's improved the team. How he got better, I don't know, but he's been revelation, and the centre forward scoring.
That is on a surprise, wasn't it?
Yeah. So he seems to know, and you know, if you look at the man's record, he is a winner.
Of course he is.
He's been a winner wherever he's been. So
some people would have argued, and I saw why maybe he didn't get the job initially, but some might argue that he was possibly the only one with an ego big enough, or confidence, but maybe an ego, to take over from someone like Sir Alex. Yeah. But I still think no manager was going to be able to win it for that, really. No. But do you think that some people think that in some ways, if he was, he could have like turned United down, feeling he'd been snubbed previously after Alex left rather than when Van Gaal got it?
I actually think that any manager worth his salt, who's ambitious, would want the Manchester United job. I can't believe that anybody who's, and same with players.
Yeah. I
can't believe that maybe it's changed a little bit now, but certainly in my day, if players didn't want to play for Manchester United, I thought there was something missing or wrong. I still think that to be manager of Manchester United is a good a job, if not the best you can have anyway.
I want to finish up. I know you've got things. I could chat here all day about every different era. It's just fascinating me as a fan. But what would you say, looking back at your time at United now, from afar, your legacy, your achievements are? I mean, would you say your stadium, a few things, the stadium, the manager, one signing that you think you feel proud of?
Well, I can't. If you're asking me about my time at United, I can't. There's two separate things, aren't there? One is the team itself, and when I was young, I always want. I mean, the greatest night for me as growing up being a United supporter was when we won the European Cup for the first time. I was 21 then. My father had been chairman for 3 years. He became chairman in 65. We won the European Cup in 68. For me, that night at Wembley, particularly after what had happened, going into Europe, the crash.
10 years.
10 years exactly, almost to the time, and all the rest of it. To win that, and just before Matt retired as well, to me that was unbelievable as a United supporter. Never forgotten. And I suppose when I took over as chairman, my ambition was Manchester United to be the number one football club in the world. And I suppose that by winning the European Cup, or doing the treble in '99, the year before I stepped down as chief exec, was everything to me, because it gave me that European Cup which I'd always wanted. It was the third double we'd done. 94, 96, 99. We'd just been voted the number one sporting franchise in the world. 99. Right. We were the wealthiest sporting franchise in the world, bigger than all the American football, whatever. So I suppose from the playing side, I got what I wanted. Do you know what I mean? The treble, it was unbelievable.
In fact, no one's repeated it in this country yet.
No, there's no. Actually, it was quadruple, really.
Yeah.
If you take in the World Club Championship in Tokyo, when we beat the Brazilians, we were actually champions of the world. So that's one thing. I wanted to do that, and I did it before I retired. Then you look at the other side of it, which is the stadium side of it. And when I think when I took over in 1980, when you look, the programme had started. The old North Stand was there, but it was the old North Stand. And we started on the South Stand, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the Stretford end wasn't done, the East Stand wasn't done, you know what I mean? And when you think in the 20 years that I was there, how much we'd spent, I think I worked it out in the book, I spent something like 114 million on the stadium.
Yeah.
And completely rebuilt the stadium. Built the new Stretford end, built the North Stand, developed the East Stand just before I left last year in 2000, and the South Stand, rebuilt the stadium really.
Yeah.
Now it's 75 now. When I left, it was 67. 67,000 all-seater.
Yeah.
And you look at the facilities within it, all the boxes.
Well, I used to boast, because I was going to games at an early age for people my age. I went games a lot younger than they did, And I remember being proud to say that I've been in Old Trafford when there'd been 62,000 there because the games in the 70s.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd see those days again. So all of a sudden,
And we did that. We did it also through difficult periods, you know, with all Heysel and all the Hillsborough, all the Bradford fire, all the things that were happening in the game. You know what I mean? So I look at the stadium and I think now I'm proud. When I sit in that stadium, I'm proud of what built. And also, you can actually throw in a third one there, Carrington.
Yeah.
I went out in Carrington in the 90s with a friend of Les Kershaw's, the chief scout, John, I forgot his name now, and we went out and viewed the land at Carrington, which was owned by Shell, and thought, right, we'll have this, and we negotiated and bought 110 acres there and developed it, put in 10, 11 pitches, built the indoor medical facilities.
Sir Alex consulted about this.
Once I bought the land, I said,
Yeah.
right, we've got 110 acres here, Alec. He came in on the planning. Of course he did, yeah. Planning and the training staff and the medical staff and all the rest of it. And we built Carrington. You know, so I did that. My last year as chief exec before I stepped down, Carrington was handed over.
So the first thing you seen from the European Cup, you were there, and you're the chairman, the first team to win the Premier League, more importantly, United's first title for 26 years.
Yeah.
The treble, World Club treble. You didn't do bad, really, did you?
Well, I like to think I did all right. I don't lie awake thinking that you know what could have been. No, I don't.
No.
No.
You don't ever think, why did we lose that Sheffield Wednesday League Cup final? Damn.
Oh well, no. I mean, there's obviously little things along the way that you think of. There's certain games. I always remember being the two games. The worst in my time were losing to Arsenal in '79, which was my father's last year. Do you remember the cup fight? Coming back from 2-0 down to 2-2.
And we can still now I say to Mickey Thomas and Gary, I say, just trap that there and not letting you know. You know.
Well, that was one, and the other one was losing to the league to Blackburn in '95. Really.
To me, that was worse than 2012. You know, they were both bad because I was at Upton Park that day and I was ill because the amount of chances we had, and you know, that goalkeeper never plays well as that again. If he played for 200 games,
and we should have had a penalty as well.
Yeah.
And Coley wasn't on for.
What made it worse that day was the fact that if Blackburn had won, but they actually got beat.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I'd almost did have won it.
Yeah. That's brilliant, Martin. I really appreciate your time and looking forward to reading your book. And I might text you and ask you another question. But brilliant. Thanks very much and good luck with the book, Martin.
All right.